Hey everybody, welcome to the wrong end of the snake. It is a webcast about audio, touring, and the relationships we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on the wrong end of the snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably, 10 years as front of house and monitor mixers for Linkin Park. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend. He has 8 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Engineer of the Year awards. I am Ken Van Druten, aka Pooch. I'm a front house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry. I'm a 3-time Grammy-nominated recording engineer. I have 8 Top Dog Front of House Engineer of the Year awards. And I'm also a winner of the Parnelli Front of House Engineer of the Year award. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to be able to ask questions of our guests, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. Links to register are in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app. We will answer as many questions as possible during the hour and then answer any leftover questions in our Q&A overtime episode. Look for that to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in a few days. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to visit our social media. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you tell us about our guests this week?
All right, today we've got John J.D. Douglas. John's a drummer and artist for his entire life. J.D. merged the two passions, ultimately becoming the premier drum builder and customizers for international superstars including the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Bon Jovi, Maná, Van Halen, ZZ Top, Pantera, Iron Maiden, and Aerosmith. He has filled in as a drummer on international tours with Aerosmith, ZZ Top, Slash, and others. His black and white portraits of rock stars and actors hang on the walls of some of the most famous people in the world, including over 40 works at the Beverly Hills Hilton. Please welcome a friend of Merv Griffin and myself, John J.D. Douglas. Thank you for coming.
What's up, fellas? That's good. Well, after your long list of credits, I was waiting for. Well, that's all the time we have, folks. So next time, our apologies to JD.
That's all we have. That's all the time that we have.
Our credentials.
Oh, that's great, man. Hey, JD, we're so happy that you're on. JD's a longtime friend of both Tater and I. We've done a bunch of tours with him, and so we're lucky to have him, and he's a really, really interesting guy. So let's just get in it. JD, why don't you tell us, start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and where did you get your love for music, and take us from the top, as they say.
Born and raised in Southern Illinois, a little town across the river from St. Louis. And all I know is my parents told me I was banging on pots and pans like before I could walk. So before I can even remember something about drums. And as soon as I could, I took it in band. So in Illinois, I think we started in 5th grade. So I took drums all through school, in high school, marching band, all that stuff. That's really the only way I learned. And art came along kind of slowly after that. I can remember preferring to be in my room drawing if I wasn't playing drums, other than, instead of going out and playing football with my brother. So art and music, art and drums. Drums and art probably is the more appropriate order of things. Always what I've been wanting to do, and it took me, all the way through high school, and after high school, still drums, playing drums. So went on the road.
were you was the plan originally for you to be the drummer of major bands, or what was
Oh
the
yeah,
thing? Were you
of
yeah,
course.
that was your thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you think, or I did, think all you had to do is, persevere and keep playing. And each band, I was really lucky that I got out of high school, I joined this band that was playing. Back then, there was a great rock circuit in maybe everywhere, I don't know, but certainly in Texas. At this point, I was living in Texas, and so this band, I used to go see them all the time, sneak into clubs before I was of age, and see this band called Rage, and they were just amazing. Lights and sound, they sounded great. Played all my favorite music, Van Halen and Cheap Trick and everything in between. And of course, back then, top 40 was rock, man. It was Judas Priest and Quiet Riot and, all the great stuff. And soon I found out, I don't even know how, because in the 80s, I don't know how you found out anything, that they were looking for a drummer. And somehow I got like a cassette into their hands. And next thing I knew, I was learning, 3 hours of cover tunes, rehearsed with a couple of days. And then they were all older than me and very seasoned and just a well-oiled machine. And I learned so much from those guys. Great bunch of guys, great band. I learned how to be a professional drummer at that point, by getting thrown in the deep end and
Yeah.
with these guys that are so much better and seasoned. And it was the best education ever. And unfortunately, I don't think those kind of breeding grounds don't exist anymore. It's sad.
Was there any formal art training back then?
Just high school. Everything was high school. I was the baby of 5 kids and kind of the anomaly. I don't think they knew where the drummer and the artist came in, but it did. And I just found that being in a band always required artwork. Somebody's got to design a logo and maybe do the flyers and backdrops, and it was a natural progression for me.
Were you doing this? Were you doing this for Rage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So they had some
And
good
so
looking
were
flyers back then, huh?
Yeah, I bet they had some great looking flyers. And were you have come to be known, as we get further on, we'll talk about this some more, but as like the premier drum customizing guy as far as artwork goes. If you guys don't know, man, just go online and search for JD. You'll see amazing kits that he's done for all kinds of artists. But were you back then? Were you customizing your own kits? Was that like kind of where this started, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, early on, I think my first drum kit was like orange sparkle, and then like off-brand thing. And I didn't have any money to just order like a new kit, or this was so off-brand. I don't think you could walk into a music store and order, another kick drum or a second floor tom or whatever. So I would just get them used, and then pretty soon I had like a second floor tom that was red sparkle, or you know what I mean. And the OCD artist in me was like, oh, I can't do that. And they were wrap drums. So first thing I did was went and got, at the time it was called contact paper, which was like shelf paper, usually came in white or checkerboard, but I found it in chrome. So I took all the drums, all the hardware off the drums for the first time, and wrapped everything in chrome. So now they all matched and they were shiny. And to me, it was like, it's like a new drum kit. And it was a pretty good job until I put the lugs on, and then you put the heads on and then it wrinkled. Everywhere there was a lug, it wrinkled. Because it's just super thin Mylar crap, but it still looks shiny. And from 20 feet away, it I dealt with it for all through high school. It was a chrome wrapped drum kit, and then pretty soon I was painting my kick drum heads with the band name on the on the kick drum head, and you get a little bit braver to where I was eventually painting the shells, and learning what materials to use and trial and error on my stuff. I just wanted my stuff to look cool. That was it.
That's
Influenced by all the the cool drum kits. Myron Grumbacher from Pat Benatar had the greatest looking drum kits, and Alex Van Halen had the over the top, setups, not so much art, but really creatively set up and odd things, incorporated. All that influenced me to kind of do the same thing.
And so how did Rage go from Rage to Kick Tracy? Let's go there. So Kick Tracy's
that's a big leap.
It is. Okay, sorry. You can fill in the middle if you want.
That was Rage was, all cover music for the most part. And then, like 3 years of 5-6 nights a week, solid. And then finally you just kind of go, okay, well, this has been great, but it's not getting me, where I want to be. So I came back home to Houston, and we put together an all original band. And that band was called XOX, which had a female guitar player and female singer, and then me and a bass player. So it was very, very late 80s, big hair and, rock outfit. We got about as popular as you could get. We just could not get signed in Houston. And so I was painting my drum kits at that point. And the guys from ZZ Top would come see XOX play when they were in town or whatever. And so eventually I met Frank, and he commented on my drum kit and asked who painted it. And I said, I did. And he goes, would you ever want to paint a kit for me? And I was, okay. Never even crossed my mind. So that was the first drums that I painted for anybody other than me was Frank or ZZ Top.
And did he use that kit? And if he did, what tour was it on?
Yeah, that was Recycler tour.
Ah.
Yeah. And then he had me go back and repaint some other kits that he had used. And, but since then, and I painted the Recycler while they were making the album. So, and I ended up doing 2 kits for that tour. So yeah, and I've painted every one of his kits since then. I should know the number, but I don't. It's probably around
bunch, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a bunch. Yeah.
So you kind of left out Kick Tracy. We went right to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so XOX.
Yeah.
We just couldn't. Great band, great bunch of people. We just couldn't get where we wanted to be, and eventually you just kind of go and then I learned about this band in LA that had just got signed and was looking for a drummer, and it was Kick Tracy. So I flew out there and auditioned and got that. So we, that was RCA band. Like I said, they were LA band. So yeah, that's.
And that's all I want to say.
I mean, it was a great bunch of guys too. And had the unfortunate thing of the first album came out in 91, when Nevermind came out, and
Smells Like Teen Spirit killed them all.
Yeah, we were a band with long hair. So we were deemed an LA hair band, and we were marketed as such, like everything before that, and while we were doing our I'll never forget it. We were doing our first tour and stuff. We would, you integrate with the fans as much as you want and as much as you can. And everybody's talking about this. Have you heard this Nirvana? It was a total, groundswell, no hype, but spread like wildfire. And of course, yeah, you listen to it and you kind of go, oh yeah. Yeah. So we made one more album after that, but we just really couldn't. Yeah. We didn't break big. So if you don't break big, you don't break. And so it just kind of imploded under the weight of, Nevermind.
Right.
And
then so at the same that same time you were painting, right? Or did that happen kind of after that? Right about that.
No, I was painting. Yeah, because I started painting before Kick Tracy. I started painting for Frank and
okay, that was before.
Did a couple kits for Steven Adler, Guns N' Roses, and then I was painting drums for people while on tour with Kick Tracy. I have photos of me painting like 2 kits for Extreme, Paul Geary, because guess what? They were opening for ZZ. So it's just like, how this business is. It's like people.
That's great.
And then they'd ask Frank what who painted your drums? And Frank would give him my
right.
number. And so, I would play a gig with Kick Tracy and then go back to the hotel and out of the bus bay, pull out somebody else's shells and paint the kit for Porno Graffiti for Extreme. And I did two Chili Pepper kits when I was with Kick Tracy and a couple other ZZ kits. That's when I first met Maná, Alex Gonzalez from Maná. I started painting drums for him then.
So you've had long-term relationship with a lot of these guys.
Yeah. I mean that's almost 30 years with Maná. Yeah.
So let's say, how does it get to Van Halen? Let's go there.
Look at you. Yeah. I know. Way too soon. I'd only been teching. I started teching for Frank after Kick Tracy imploded. I went back home and without, I didn't know what, for the first time in my life, I was like, man, I don't, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And Frank, was like, hey, come be my drum tech. And I was kind of like, well, but I didn't have any other prospects or, way to make any money. And I'd been in LA for 3 or 4 years at that point. And now I'm back in Texas and okay, the last thing I ever wanted to do was set up somebody else's drums so they could play, but anyway, so Van Halen, Rob Kern, who'd been Al's drum tech for I don't know how long at that point, but
he's only had a few drum techs, right?
Yeah, he had
Greg Emerson, Rob, and then you, right?
Yeah. So I had met Rob because I had painted some stuff for Al when I was in Kick Tracy. I painted some drum heads and I think some congas to match his drum kit or some octobans, just kind of just matching colors and doing some drum heads and stuff. So I'd become friends with Rob Kern and he wanted to do production. And so he called me to basically replace himself when he went on to do stage manager and production. So I came on in the end of 97, basically 98 with Van Halen. And I was completely awestruck because, that was my band, one of my bands, but certainly, I mean, I learned to play drums to Van Halen and I draw that logo on my notebook at school and you know what I mean? It was
totally.
just. And
so was that Van Halen 3?
Yes.
So you'd work with Paul Geary and Gary Schmoen then, and now you're working with them again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know it's so.
It's an incestuous business, isn't
it? It is. It's a small world. It is incestuous. I can't, it's, you guys know, it's just, it is. It's.
And we're going to have Paul Geary's partner on in a few weeks too. So Steve Woods. So yeah,
Steve Woods going to come on and have us a chat as that big time LA manager.
Yeah, on the other side of the the other side of the snake on the other side.
The far other side. Now, how many Van Halen 3 go?
Yeah.
What?
You guys start out in Australia because I just watched some of the shows there on the YouTube and it was pretty. I liked it. I mean,
it was cool because the show was kind of for the first time in don't make me do the math. They did like a third of the show was Dave tunes that Sammy didn't do. They would do Romeo's Delight and songs that nobody had heard the band do in 12 years or 10 years or whatever. So a third was Dave era Van Halen, then a third was Sammy era Van Halen, then a third was the new stuff within the album. So it was great from that standpoint. I just think it was just and Gary's a great guy, super nice. Him and I used to talk all the time, and we were both big Queen and Freddie Mercury fans, and we'd talk about Queen 2 and how genius the opening Ogre Battle was. It was just, he's a great guy, great singer. I just don't think it was the right fit, obviously. So and why the first opening night of the first tour with a new singer was live on MTV, I don't know. I'm not sure that was Smart move on
As far away from home as you can get too. So right.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whose idea that was, but
Right.
but it certainly was. Still am in awe of the mighty Van Halen.
So Rob brings you in. Now you're not customizing his kit. There's already a kit there this time. You're strictly a drum tech, right?
I was drum tech, but he did not have his tour kit in yet. So he was playing on, I don't even remember what the kit was, in rehearsals. And Todd Trent, who was a Ludwig guy at the time, I remember. And then Al was just, I guess Al knew I could paint. I don't really remember, but I remember the clock was ticking, and I'd kind of go to him every night. I'd kind of go, well, the clock's ticking. If you want something on the drums, we got to figure that out. Yeah, we'll get to it tomorrow. And then eventually I think he decided on the color. He wanted this yellow. And, I don't have my shop with me in LA. So I had my friend Bill Dedamore at Pork Pie Percussion. He base coated all the drums in yellow and got them back to me. I'm like, okay, the drums are yellow. What do you want to leave them that way? What do you want? Because there was a gig like right around the corner, man, like within a week. And then so then the next rehearsal, he came with this big book of, looked educational, and it was like Sanskrit. He goes, I want these letters, which is like the oldest, I think, written language, Sanskrit, in black across the shells. I'm like, okay. So I pulled an all-nighter, like in the rehearsal room that night, painting the graphics, which just black letters on these yellow drums. And anyways, that's a long story of, no, that kit was custom painted, but it was, 11th hour.
Right. Well, I imagine a lot of your work is some of that, right?
Yeah.
Like guys, right?
No, you're right.
Minute.
But that was, next level.
So then how many kits after that? Do you know how many kits with Van Halen that you've done after that?
Well, unfortunately, those guys just don't tour enough.
Well, yeah.
So I've done, 98, 04, 07, 12, like 5, something like that. But those are all big, they're like 6 kick drums. And
huge, I know. Like,
yeah,
one of those had a fridge, right? Like in one of the kick drums. Yeah, tell us like how that came about.
Al's a joker. I can remember on the tour before that, I think we were talking about having, I know we talked about like doing, he mentioned like a rotisserie chicken in one of the kick drums. This was before Getty started doing that. And we would joke about that kind of stuff. And me, I angled for popcorn, it's like, well, okay, can I have a popcorn machine in the,
yeah, as you do.
And so it was a joke kind of a thing, and we didn't do anything. And then the next tour came, and which was 07, 08. And so Dave's back in the band, and I don't know, I guess we just picked right up back on it. And I think he said the fridge, and I'm like, serious? And he goes, yeah, why not? So boom, I was, and it's trickier than you would think to. It's quite literally
a
square peg in a round hole,
and finding one that will fit inside the drum. And then, I really, from that point, he left it up to me to figure out how to do it. And I really wanted it to be totally stealth. Like you would somehow just like open the drum head and it would open the fridge simultaneously. That was the hardest part, was figuring out that. And it was pretty heavy, drum. But a working fridge, I'd plug it in every day, and we'd stock it with Red Bull, and that has become quite infamous.
Didn't you have one with a beer tap on it?
Yeah, that was the next tour. Yeah, that was a logical. That's the one. Where else are you gonna go?
Did it work?
No.
I was say Al doesn't drink, right? So you're not gonna have beer.
But one of them was O'Doul's.
Oh, okay.
And the other one was Heineken, which is of course a nod to their home country. But yeah, those were heavy too, because I had to put plywood behind the drum heads to anchor the beer.
Support it,
real beer pull. But yeah, there was no keg in there. Sorry.
So now is Al giving you, like, when, let's say a tour would start next year or something, does he just say, do what you want, or is he giving you the ideas, or?
Yeah, everybody's different. Like Frank from ZZ now is like, he's like, the less I stay out of it, the more I like it. He's like totally surprised. He doesn't have a clue what I'm doing. And, because that's pretty risky too, because, for me.
Well, how do you come up with those ideas? Like, you've built 20 kits for that guy. How do you keep coming up with more ideas?
I know. And the ZZ kits are completely, I have the biggest creative license, because I've been doing it the longest of anybody, but also it's ZZ Top, you know what I mean? They get away with
totally
a lot more than your normal band. And then drumming wise, Frank triggers his toms, and the kicks and snares are triggered and mic'd, but the toms are strictly triggered. So now I can really do some crazy stuff. That's because that middle, I started building this really long stuff down the middle, or north drums, or, as a centerpiece, and that drum sounds awful. It's just terrible.
I was going to say, if anybody brought back north drums, JD brought them back in.
Brought it back with a vengeance.
Where did you even find those things? I mean,
yeah. And weighed a ton, and like the bearing edge was like a half inch, and then a quarter inch, like totally inconsistent. And I had to route it, the bearing edge, just to get a real drum head on it. It was just terrible sounding, but in the ears and out front sounds great, because it's
right.
So I carry on with that tradition of building a ridiculous drum in the middle. And it's untunable and god awful, and but through the miracle of technology, sounds great out front.
And did you do their mic stands, by the way?
Yeah, I did the mic stands.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I did the mic stands. And that was, you get your inspiration. You never know. Driving around, I was enthralled with these smokestacks of exhaust on a semi, that perforated metal, and so I made mic stands for Billy and Dusty out of this perforated metal, and they had it chrome plated, and then we ran an LED tube up the middle so that they could change lighting and stuff. And
those look really nice.
Thank you. Yeah. And then I got to revamp them finally last year for their 50th. I did a great big drum kit, and then I said I'm gonna do some mic stands, and so I had a pattern of Z's all cut out of metal, and that was a learning experience, because it looked great. I had them all cut out with I don't know what they cut it out with, like a laser jet, or I don't know. And I got it back. Looked great. I was like, yes, and I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna make it rust. I put it outside my shop in Houston, so it took like 20 minutes to rust. But what I didn't realize was, because it took so much metal out of it, it was a spring. It was a bar. It was this, a 5.5 foot tall giant spring. So I was like, ooh, I didn't see that coming, So right. I had to open it up and run a piece of aluminum, like U channel or something, just to give it some rigidity up inside, which worked out fine too, because then I ran an LED strip inside that needed to be there anyway. So, but yeah, the unintended spring factor was, never done it before.
Factor in.
Yeah.
Any beard hairs get caught in any of these, or anything come back a little hairy or anything?
I can't confirm or deny. I know they're sharp.
Confirm or deny.
Yeah, I know they're sharp. I'm glad I don't have to touch them.
So here you are.
Here you go.
Ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Here you go. Good luck with that.
Good luck.
So here you are. You're this drum tech that's working for some of the biggest bands in the world. You're a guy that's building drum kits, customized drum kits for some of the biggest bands in the world. Those are two huge opportunities and businesses going on already. But then you start getting asked to play for some of these bands. Like one of our things. Yeah. One of our, experiences together, which we'll get into a little bit with Tater and me and you, was you were teching for Brent on Slash, and we were in Russia, and man, it's a whole thing, like how that happened. But you ended up playing drums that night, and I was like, wait a minute, the drum tech is playing drums? Like what? Like I had no idea.
The drummer's playing bass.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get that whole story would take us 20 minutes to talk about, but the quick version is the bass player knocked his retina loose, Todd, and Brent, the drummer, said, well, I can play bass and JD can play drums, we're still going to do a show.
Like noon on
and
a show day or something.
Yeah.
On a show day. Yeah, on a show day. And so anyway, I mean, what was the first big, huge band? It wasn't Slash, right? Like before that, you had already played.
It was ZZ. That was,
Okay.
yeah. After, we were in Europe as well. And Frank we had a night off in Paris. And then we're playing the Zenith, whatever that is, the next day. And so I got a phone call at like 2 a.m. I just like powered down and got into bed, and my phone rang. The hotel room I don't think I had cell phone then.
Pre-cell phone. Yeah.
Well, at least in Europe, I didn't have it. But my room rang, and it was Billy Hale, and telling me, oh, they just took Frank out in a stretcher, and the last thing he said was, get John to play drums. And I'm like, yeah, right, click. And then he called me back. No, I'm serious, man. I'm like, come on, dude, it's late. I totally didn't believe him. And there was a backstory to that of why. But I hung up.
What, that Billy would always tell you stuff that's bullshit?
Well, yeah, well, of course, that's a given. But no, the last time we were in Europe, Billy Hale had appendicitis. So,
right.
And just like the show before, we were all joking, because, hey, Billy, you seen your appendix around here? It was like that kind of thing. And then like a day later or something, he calls and tells me, oh, Frank has appendicitis.
Got it.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Coincidence. So, but then Gibbons calls me in my room after Billy Hale tried 2 or 3 times to convince me. And Gibbons was like, Mr. Douglas, time to step up to the plate. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is legit. And, of course it's Gibbons. So he's telling me, well, at that time I was mixing Frank's monitors, and, the changing all the programs on the D drum stuff, I would change sounds in the middle of the song sometimes, and running a click track with a drum machine just goes to Frank. So I was like busy over there. That's my gig. So Gibbons is like, okay, of course you'll have to move your console up and put it like underneath the hi-hat. Like, I'm like, what?
What?
I'm handicapped enough. I'm like, somebody else is going to have to do my job over there. And, I have the headset in the mic, and I'll talk them through it. I'll tell them what I need. I'll tell them what programs to change. You know what I mean? I'll tell them my job. I'll run the click with my foot up here. I can change the programs because I had just every song in a program, just a little Boss drum machine. And I'll run the click. And that's because, as Gibbons, he was trying to like micromanage, telling me I'm going to have to put mixed monitors while I'm playing drums. And so when you find out you're going to play drums for ZZ at 2 a.m, guess what you don't do? You don't go back to sleep.
Yeah,
that's true.
I haven't been to sleep yet. So that was rough because, my mind is just spinning. And so I had to do that show on no sleep. And the band came in and did a sound check, which they normally don't do. So we hit a few key points, a few transitions, like from, waiting on the bus into Jesus. There's a transition there that, they've been doing it for 40 years, and
right.
You're doing it 40 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we rehearsed a few songs and rehearsed some transitions like that. And before I knew it, lights were down, and I was playing most of those songs for the first time ever, with those guys with the beards. And
wow.
Yeah. So I ended up doing 3 shows with them. And then there was a break, and, Frank healed and came back, and, it was a trip.
And you're the only other drummer to ever play with them, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm told. Yeah, they've never done a show without the original guys, except for those 3 shows that I did. So
wow,
got that going for me.
What an honor, though. You know what I mean? I mean, that's amazing. It's like, and what I think is amazing that, there was no sell. Like immediately Gibbons was like, oh yeah, no, JD's playing. You know what I mean? And that's happened, several times in your career.
Yeah.
And especially like the Slash situation that, we were on. It was like literally Brent saying, "Nope, guess what, JD, you're playing drums."
Yeah. And I wasn't on that conversation with Slash. I don't know how much convincing, because
I don't think there was much.
There wasn't enough time to be convinced.
That's true. But, I'm like, yeah, I was so early on that was his first solo tour, right? So
yeah,
most of that material was certainly new to me, except for the gun stuff, so that was particularly rough. And it was interesting, because Fitzy put on the bass, so it was weird.
Yes.
But Slash, great, because yes, no pun intended on the Slash. So, he would, I remember I remember doing Civil War, and Civil War has a lot of breakdowns and stops and starts. And I just remember him kind of nodding his head when,
like, get ready,
helping me. Do I stop here or do I keep on going? And
what's that nod? Keep going or stop?
Yeah. But
dude, and we got to give a shout out to him. I mean, that was actually, Tater and I were like amazed that you knew all the stuff, but we're like, oh, he's a great drummer, he'll be fine. But the fact that Brent was like knew all the bass parts, even though he was the drummer in the band,
I know,
that is like the weirdest. It is the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I was like,
I know, that's some crazy talent right there.
Totally is.
And
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I just remember the end of that up on stage. It was a Russian 5,000 seat place, and the air conditioning worked so well. And it was a little cool in there, so you weren't sweating at all or anything. And you're perfectly refreshed. And just how after the stress of you playing, going through the sound check that we did, and then you having to tear the drums down, and you were just glasses and water bottles just everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there and you go, I need like a half hour here, guys, to tear this down before I'm going to start. I was like, just go ahead. No problem. Take your
time. All the time you want.
I was still trying to catch my breath, and never stopped. And it was unbelievably hot, and no air movement or anything.
Yeah.
Here's the biggest thing I remember I remember the opening song. Was it Ghost?
I
remember it was the first song, which had like 16th notes on the hi-hat.
Yeah, because he's doing
I can remember halfway through that song, I got a cramp in my arm. I'm screwed.
Oh, no.
I'm like, I will never make it. And then, of course, you go through it, and I had a cramp pretty much in every body part during that show. And then I just remember going off stage before the encore, which is Paradise City, which typically Slash just takes a lead until he can lead no more, which is,
exactly
15, 20 minutes of shredding.
He's still soloing.
Yes. And I can remember going over there and still, just like not, trying to catch my breath. I remember looking at Slash. I go, he goes like Paradise City. I'm like, okay, you're going to show mercy and like short a little bit. And I remember him doing his sunglasses like this and go, no mercy.
No mercy.
Okay.
He's like, you made it this far perfectly. Yeah. No mercy.
No mercy.
No mercy.
I was just like, please.
Oh, yeah. So who are the other huge bands that you've played with?
Well, I mean, certainly Aerosmith is probably the most notoriously, the thing that happened in Vegas last year. Same thing. I got a call at like 2 p.m.
I love how you get so much time to prepare for these.
I know. And, Steve and Tyler called during our sound check, because they don't sound check either. So we just do a crew jam, and my buddy Phil X was down because he was going to sit in with us. And so we were just getting started on the first song when tour manager came out with the phone and pointed to me and pointed to the phone. I'm kind of like, okay, this has never happened. So we stopped. And so with that one, because it's Vegas and they have all these VIP tours of people, so that one I couldn't even sit at the kit and play. So it's just like I just listened to the last show from like 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock. But I'm thinking that the band would surely come in and do a sound check.
Probably not, right?
They don't.
Not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, I remember after that very first show, which was a miracle, and that again, you know, I'm exhausted and more mentally than even physically, because it's just like 150% focused on not, because now, unlike with ZZ was 2003, so there was nobody filming with their cell phones and stuff. There's some great bootleg. I got a great audio bootleg, but now, of course, everybody, you know, it's going to be on YouTube before I'm back in my hotel room that night. So I'd like to not embarrass myself or the band, and so we finished that night, and you know, I remember Joe Perry was just like, I can't believe you did that, you know, and I'm like, well, I don't know who's crazier, me for doing it, or you guys for letting me, because you didn't even come in and do a sound check or anything. I mean, it could have been a completely bad.
It could have, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're such a pro, dude. So you pulled it off, you know.
And you're listening every night too, right? I mean, you got your ears in, right?
I mean, I can't help but, you know, I'm a drummer first, so I absorb things, and you know, I kind of I'm not mixing Joey's monitors, but I have control over, but I have control over like 16 different things through this hearback system. I don't even know how it's set up, but so I do know cues that he listens for. I know when to goose Joe Perry, so I know the ins and outs of those cues, just because A, I'm a drummer, B, you know, I give those cues to Joey, so I kind of knew what to look for in those things. And much like the ZZ thing, where the about 70% of that Aerosmith show was on a click, because it's Vegas and it's timeline, right. You know, for
right,
pyro and video and everything is to the time code. So me, I love a click anyway, but in those circumstances, it's a blessing, because I look down at a set list, I'm like, I don't even know how this song goes, let alone the right tempo. So you can give me a click all day long, and I will say thank you. That was the saving grace for even when I did the ZZ stuff, having the, because all the songs to me felt really slow because my adrenaline is jacked. And then between songs, when I'm trying to drink water and towel, it feels like a heartbeat. And then there's somebody starting the next tune. I'm like, oh, wait, I got to catch my breath.
Now, Aerosmith didn't Bobby Schneck play guitar for, I think he did for.
Done it in the past.
In the past. Yeah. So they've had a crew guy jump in before.
Yeah.
They're not afraid.
They probably didn't think anything of it. You know, me, I'm like, what? Are you sure?
Okay, next.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I kind of don't even remember being asked. I think it was just kind of like, okay, you're playing tonight. Oh, okay.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
And speaking of small world, Bobby Schneck was the other guitar player in the Slash's band when you drummed for Slash.
Yes, he was.
That's
so,
wow.
Talk about small world. Yep.
Yep.
Give a shout out to Bobby Schneck.
That's it, man. We knocked it out.
One of the things that I've noticed about you, JD, is being a front of house guy, is that, you know, we work for a lot of bands that don't do sound checks. And so it's always a crew jam, right? And one of the things I've noticed about you in particular, well, number one, you're one of the best drum tuners in the world. And I assume that's just because you're a drummer and you know how to make, you know, drums sound amazing. But the second thing that I've noticed is
Except that North drum.
Yeah. No, that gets an asterisk.
Yeah, asterisk.
The one thing, though, that I've noticed is that and I want to know whether you adopt this consciously, you are able somehow to mimic the drummer that you're the drum tech for. So, like, for instance, when I did Slash, you could do Brent, like, totally hit. You used to hit like him in the afternoons. When, you know, the 2 minutes that I worked for Van Halen, you would play like Alex, you know what I mean? So, is that a conscious thing, or is it just, you just do it?
No, I think, no, not at all. I will take that as a compliment. Thank you.
It's meant to be. It's meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. No, no, it's not. I think it's just, it's their kit, playing their tunes. I think, again, just sitting and observing, I probably just kind of absorbed how they would do it. And also in light of during all these times, it's not like I have a regular playing gig, to where I'm just me. Because I kind of stopped pursuing that a long ago, and so the only playing I do is in those, for the most part.
Got it.
So it must be just in
watching your guy.
And just kind of, and I guess maybe an unspoken. Not code, but an unspoken thing where I should kind of replicate what you're going to get when he is sitting there. I know,
and you do it very well. That's not a common drum tech thing, and that's something that I recognize in some of the best drum techs in the world are guys that do that, whether it's conscious or not. They're able to be like, they're
paying attention,
be able to replicate their guy. Yeah.
They're paying attention, yeah. And let's just note all three of these drummers had 3 different reasons they didn't play the drums.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll just keep that. Let's note that just so.
None of it had anything to do with me.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there to level the playing field. So
yeah, totally, man, totally. Yeah. Hey, I want to get into, we're running out of time, but I want to get into the whole artwork thing part of this.
Yeah,
customizing drums. You're a drummer. Because you have some of your artwork is in the biggest places in the world. And tell us how that began and your connection to Merv Griffin.
Okay. Well,
you have to tell everybody who Merv Griffin is? I don't think so. You shouldn't have to tell anybody who Merv Griffin is, right?
Well,
I don't know. Maybe you do these days.
I was just gonna say, man, that was a while ago, man. But you could Google him and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, you'll find out who he is.
Definitely a power player.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the art thing obviously has always been, and my favorite thing. If I had to pick, like, okay, well, what do you really like to paint or draw or whatever? Because when I was growing up, it was just draw. I would just draw people. That's what I like to do. So black and white people. And of course, because I haven't grown up or matured, I still, I grew up drawing my favorite bands. And
Peter Pan lifestyle.
Yeah. And so now I paint on canvas. And so I paint, most of the stuff I paint on the road, as you guys know, time off can be the killer of what to do. And, that's when some guys get into trouble. That's when, it's like, I don't drink or do any drugs or, so I'm like, okay, I go see a movie, eat some popcorn, but then I roll a canvas up and I tape it to my hotel wall and I paint. Portraits of, what else? Rock and roll. Because they say paint what you know. This is all I know, So over the years of the Hard Rock Cafes, they actually contacted me maybe 15 years ago because my name kept coming up when they would buy custom painted guitars or drums, and they always like to get as much info about it as they can. And I guess my name kept coming up, in the head buyer there tracked me down, and we became friends. And then so the Hard Rock Cafes started buying my portraits and putting them in casinos or hotels. And the Merv thing to me, the Merv thing is a great example of the importance of relationships and how, not only our business works, but really life, so my very first year with ZZ Top, which was my first teching gig, we did a video shoot, and the wardrobe makeup lady, Audrey, was super pro and super cool, and we just kind of hit it off. And then like maybe a year later, we were back home, and I get a call on a Sunday night from Audrey saying, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" I'm like, nothing. And she was, well, Merv Griffin's going to be in town and he's going to shoot a commercial for his casino. And I've seen the script and I've talked to the director and I think you could paint. I think there's some artwork in there for you, like a jacket or something. And let me tell you, at this point, my portfolio was like nothing, anemic. I mean, I didn't hardly have anything. And so I went down there and with my cheesy, tiny little portfolio and
your yellow drums with Sanskrit, right?
Yeah, no, that was long before that. I mean, it was, this is like 1995. There's a couple of drums, some drum heads, some jean jackets with skulls and flames and just like this really stereotypical, predictable airbrush looking, kind of crap. But it's all it's all I could do at that point. And so here I meet Merv and the director, and I'm like, my parents were like, my mom would watch Merv Griffin show, and so I obviously knew who he was, and so show him the thing, and so right away he's like, well, he loves. I did this lightning bolt drum kit. He loves our lightning bolts, so he wanted that on a jacket. So right away it went to 2 jackets instead of 1. I'm gonna paint 2. I'm gonna do flames up one sleeve, and I'm gonna do lightning bolts down this other one. And then he's like, so those jackets are getting tailored right now because they're like Italian wool or something, and they're getting fit right now. You got time? You want to stick around and have lunch with us? Well, I'm like, yeah, I could have lunch with Merv. So, and here's the favorite thing about Merv. We're sitting at this round table, and it's like 7 or 8 of us. And while everybody's chit-chatting, Merv has a napkin, and he's writing clues for Wheel of Fortune, because he invented Jeopardy and he invented Wheel of Fortune. But he's so hands-on, he's got a napkin and he'll hold it up and say, okay, can you, guess? Because Wheel of Fortune is basically Hangman,
Right.
We're kids, right? So here's this is a good one because there's only one consonant and, and he gives it to his assistant and his assistant would fax it back to the Wheel of Fortune because he's doing clues for Wheel of Fortune. Merv Griffin. Yeah.
In the middle of lunch.
Yeah, totally had great stories to tell, as you would imagine. And anyway, so I ended up painting these 2 jackets overnight. A lot of pressure because it's for Merv, and there are these 2, custom fitted jackets that I had to get right and deliver at 8 a.m. the next morning for this shoot. So I went down, did the same thing. We went to the same Mexican restaurant. And so he's like, I'd like you to paint. I own this hotel called the Beverly Hilton in Beverly Hills, and there's this big wall.
Small little joint.
There's this big wall overlooking the swimming pool, and I've always envisioned, a mural there of maybe some of the famous people that have stayed at my hotel, and he names them all: Marilyn Monroe and blah blah blah, all these big Hollywood elites of the golden. Would you think you'd want to be interested in that? So long story short, I give him my info and everything. And then like maybe a month later or something, I get a FedEx in the mail and there's like Polaroids of the wall. And so I ended up painting, probably 40 or 50 canvas, like portraits of people. He flew me out, my wife and I, out to the Beverly Hilton to look at that wall. I never did paint that wall. As far as I know, nobody ever did, but he bought a bunch of paintings. And for the next 10 years or so, every time I was in LA and had like any time off, I'd rent a car and go over to the Hill because his offices were in the Beverly Hilton. And I'd go in there and I'd say, yeah, it's John Douglas, is Mervin. And if he was there, he'd see me, and if I had a painting, because I paint on the road, and I'd roll out a painting and here's Marilyn Monroe. He'd go, ooh, is that for sale? And I'm like, yes, Mr. Griffin, everything. So,
yes, Mr. Griffin, everything is for sale.
Yeah, for you. But he was great. He like I say, commissioned a bunch of paintings, bought pretty much everything I'd roll out in front of him, when I was on the road. And Merv Griffin.
And
yeah, I mean, you still, I know you still.
What's that?
What'd you say?
Did you paint some really big ones?
Yeah. And I did some stuff in when I it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, or the opposite of that. So like pop in his office, and he goes, hey, and he'd call in somebody, somebody that ran some hotel or something like, hey, aren't we redoing such and such a restaurant? We can probably get John to paint something there. It was that kind of thing. Hey, oh yeah, you okay? Well, it was always that kind of thing. And I would do these big animal portraits for one of his restaurants, and just gigantic stuff. And then I ended up painting the winners of the Golden Globe Awards, because that's where
That's
those
one,
are held.
yeah.
And then one time he called me up and said, oh, hey, the American Film Institute, AFI, is doing a tribute to Clint Eastwood. And me and Clint go way back. Paint a nice big portrait of Clint for me, will you? And so I would do a great big, 4 foot by 5 foot portrait of Clint and FedEx it out there, and they'd stretch it and hang it in the lobby of the Beverly Hilton, and so, yeah, I was his guy there for.
And Merv just calls you up on the cell phone.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah. This person would call and say, hey, John, do you have time to talk to Merv? Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Okay. Please hold for Merv. And then boom, then Merv would come on.
You got to ask if you have time for Merv. Everybody has time for Merv.
Time for Merv.
Yeah. God.
So
you have a style about your artwork. It's not just black and white, right? It's got bluish tones.
That was by accident. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Because I know you have this style that you're recognized by. I know, like, I've been to the Beverly Hilton and walked by a painting and went, I know that's JD's painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can tell you exactly how it was. I was mortified when it happened because, So I had met Merv there, and we were talking about, painting that mural out there. So he called up one day and said, "Can you do a portrait as big as you can there? Ship it to me, so you can ship it to me in the style that you would kind of foresee this mural being in." And of course, I love black and white, sometimes a little hand tinted. I'm like, "Okay, sure. What do you?" And he's like, "Oh, and we'll pay you for it." He's like super gracious and like, "Hey, cool." And I'm like, well, who do you want me to paint? He goes, "Oh," you can hear him thinking. He goes, "Ooh, how about that Merv Griffin? I'm not Merv Griffin. Who's Meg Ryan?" He goes, "How about that Meg Ryan? I like Meg Ryan." I'm like, okay. So again, this pre-internet. So like when you get a job like this, it's like, where do you go to find? You can't do a Google search and get an image. I had to go to magazine stores and look for it was like I would painstakingly look at people and us and all these magazines looking for a good picture. Took a few days at least to find a good photo. So I went home. At this point, I painted in a tiny little room, a 10 by 10 room. So I got the biggest canvas I could get, which is 48 by 60 in this little bitty room. And I paint Meg Ryan. And I think, okay, I think it's done. And I take it out and I set it down, then I get far away, and then I'm like, oh, and then I take it outside and then I walk far away and I'm like, oh, she looks terrible. She looks sunburned. It's too dark. I painted it too dark. And I'm like, I'm screwed. I got to call Merv Griffin and tell him I'm in over my head. I can't do it. I'm not your guy. I can't do it.
Oh man.
And then I'm like, let me see if I can fix it. I don't know. I'm too new to know, So I take the canvas back in there and I basically paint over it with diluted white. I try to make everything brighter. So I dilute it with white. And little did I know that when you mix this brand of paint, white in the black, it shifts to blue. So it was a happy accident, but again, I knew nothing of it, but I'm just trying to save this very important client to this potential deal, and try to not, send something completely embarrassing. So I went back and forth with the black and white to get these grays. And I also discovered that I could make her skin look like really creamy and just like looked so much better than even the original one. Not to mention I fixed her and she wasn't scorched by the sun. And so I did it, and I would go back and check it outside, and I got it to, I like it. And so that's how I trying to save my butt and learn the hard way, and where I stumbled on that, which I'm sure probably every other artist already knew, but I did not.
And Merv bought it, right?
Merv bought it, and he bought everything afterwards, because everything I did black.
You did in that same style.
Yeah,
right.
That same style. Yeah. So this was 100% airbrush, which I kind of don't do anymore. But this was, again, I was enthralled with trying to learn how to do this airbrush because it was completely foreign to me, coming from a pencil. But he loved it and kept sending me work really kind of up until he died. I remember I was in LA making the Van Halen record. If I remember correctly, it's 2011. And I remember thinking, because I was staying in the valley, and I'm thinking, you know what? Next day off, I should get in a car, go over the hill. It had been a while at that point. And
Yeah, go see Merv.
Yeah.
You
And
tell
then
Alex I'm going to be a little late. I got to see a friend of mine, Merv.
Yeah. Put Alex on hold.
Yeah.
Stand by. I'm going to see Merv.
Yeah. Got a bigger name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, it's crazy. I mean, sometimes I forget, I was working with this lady on getting in art galleries early this year. And somehow it just kind of came in as a, oh yeah, kind of a thing, because everybody kind of knows me for this whole rock and roll thing. And my clients are, the Van Halens and Aerosmiths and all that stuff. And then somebody somewhere said, well, what's this about Merv Griffin? I'm like, oh yeah. And it's like, well, why didn't you lead with that?
That's what I've always been telling you. That you got to lead with Merv.
Lead with Merv. What are you thinking?
Lead with Merv always. If you got Merv in there, you got to lead with it.
Yeah, you played drums with Aerosmith. Who cares about that? Lead with Merv.
Lead with Merv.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Well, hey, listen, I think we're pretty much out of time, but there is a bunch of questions that we want to ask you in our question and answer period. We're going to come to that right after this, and then you guys check back on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and we'll get to hear some more from you. JD, thank you for coming, man.
Thank you.
It was really awesome.
You guys are awesome.
Yep.
You're the best, man.
Thanks, man.
Hey guys, next week on Wrong End of the Snake, it's Jim's service. Jim is a backline technician and personal assistant for some of the most recognized artists and bands in this business. His clients include, much like JD, Guns N' Roses, Lenny Kravitz, Johnny Lang, Foreigner, Van Halen, Kiss, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Smashing Pumpkins, Aerosmith, Black Crowes, Cheap Trick, and many, many more. He works in the studio with these artists and has toured around the world for over 3 decades. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. We are coming up on 1,000 subscribers to our channel and are super proud about that. Help us to push us over the edge. And also, we want to close with this. There's a major push in our industry to get Congress to pass the Restart Act and continue unemployment funding like PUA and FPUC. We are a dead industry right now. Unlike other industries, we have no jobs to apply for. For some, unemployment is the only thing keeping us from selling our homes and living on the streets. We need funding, like unemployment and paycheck protection, to keep the 11 million people in the live event industry afloat. Many of us are independent contractors or own small businesses that have not had income since March. We need help. Please go to wemakeevents.org for information on how to help. Contact your local representatives and remind them about our forgotten industry. Without skilled workers like Tater, myself, and JD, there will be no live shows when we are allowed to gather again. Thank you for the support. If you're coming to this channel and not working in this industry, do what you can to, let people know about our industry, because it's a hard time right now. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Jay.